Hello everyone, I am Sammy, your devoted manga otaku, and welcome to my manga space. Today I will be discussing all of the manga I read in the month of November, and I actually have some really exciting news to share about some of the manga I'm reviewing this month and in future months. The publishing company Starfruit Books reached out to me and they asked if I'd be interested in reading some of their digital books for free. I'll be reviewing these manga over the next couple months and I can't wait to share my thoughts with you guys. Now, if you weren't aware, Starfruit Books is a small publishing company based in Florida, and their manga selection is really unique with mangaka and titles I'd never heard of before. I'll leave their website in the description below. I highly recommend you guys check them out. Also, a huge thank you to Starfruit Books for providing me with these digital copies. I feel really honored and I just really appreciate this amazing opportunity. And with that, I invite you to grab a coffee or other beverage of your choice and let's talk manga. The first series I'm going to be reviewing today is volumes 1 through 3 of the seinen series, The Golden Sheep by Kaori Ozaki. This short series had a really strong start. I really enjoyed the first volume, but I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority here when I say that it was all downhill from there. This vertical publication follows a group of friends, Sugu, Sora, Yushin, and Asari, who were all very close friends as children but lost touch after Sugu moved away. After her parents' divorce years later, Sugu ends up moving back as a high school student and is able to reunite with her old group of friends. At first, things feel unchanged, and Sugu is relieved that the bond between everyone is still intact. However, as Sugu spends time with them, she starts discovering that they've changed and not for the better. Things are so bad, in fact, that Sora is tempted to take his own life. Now, before I get into my review, there will be some mild spoilers because my biggest problem with this manga is the ending. If you'd rather avoid all spoilers, use the timestamps to jump to my star rating where I'll make sure to summarize some spoiler-free final thoughts. Also, there are some very serious and triggering themes explored in this series, including bullying, depression, suicide, sexual assault, and potential animal abuse. I will be mentioning some of these instances in my review just so you are aware. As I said before, I liked the first volume of this. I feel like it delivered a strong introduction to the characters. It was emotional and dark, with Sugu being a glimmer of light throughout the volume. Sugu, which is this character here, is this cool guitar-playing tomboy with an optimistic, no-nonsense attitude, and I loved her overall vibe. When she realizes what's happening to Sora, which is this character, she does everything in her power to protect him, which made me really happy. I think it's admirable that Sugu is determined to help her friends no matter what, but I do think she crosses a line, especially in the third volume, but I'll talk about that later in the review. As for Sora, I really liked his character as well. He's a quiet boy who enjoys drawing manga and he really loves his grandma. It's so cute. My heart broke for him many times throughout the story, and I feel like he deserved more in terms of his ending. I also really loved the old man in volume 2. I thought he was kind and funny, but unfortunately, this is where my love for the cast ends. Asari and Yushin, which are these characters on the back, They're both unlikable characters, but I would say Asari is less so. You can chalk up her jealousy issues and catty attitude to her being a teenager, but with Yushin, it's not so simple. My biggest issue with this manga is its terrible interpretation of how abuse should be handled after the fact. Yushin does some terrible things to both Sora and Asari in this story, and although he obviously feels shame and disgust towards himself, I don't feel like he atoned for any of the pain and suffering he caused. Yes, Yushin has had something traumatic happen to him in his childhood, and it explains why he does terrible things, but it doesn't excuse his behavior, and explaining his trauma doesn't automatically make me forgive him. I can't sympathize with this person when they don't deserve it. I need character development from him. I need to believe that he's changed, and I don't feel like we get any of that in this story. Also, there was this part in the last volume where Sugu wants to support Yushin and forces Sora to come along. That left a bad taste in my mouth. It felt like Sugu was putting the importance of everybody being friends again over Sora's feelings. This is what I meant earlier about Sugu trying to help everyone. Sometimes you need to cut toxic people out of your life, or at the very least, don't tell someone like Sora, who's been traumatized by Yushin, to put his feelings aside to be there for his abuser. It just didn't sit right with me. I think I understand what the books were trying to do in terms of Yushin's story. Sometimes when someone is acting out, it's because they themselves are hurting, and having a person reach out to them can make a difference. However, this is somewhat naive and just not realistic all of the time, especially in Yushin's case. Yushin needs therapy. He needs to work on his issues with a trained, licensed therapist, and then he needs to atone for his shitty behavior. He doesn't need everyone pretending that his actions never happened. Also, there is a sexual assault scene that's borderline attempted rape, and it's literally just swept under the rug. It happens, and then it's never mentioned again. Not by the abuser, not by the victim, and I did not like that. And it really baffled me that it was just never mentioned again. The ending wasn't much of a conclusion. Everyone just makes up, and it just seemed very abrupt and rushed. Everyone is just sort of friends again without any apologies or meaningful conversations exchanged between them. Would I recommend this series? I don't think I would. Personally, I feel like this series doesn't take abuse seriously and promotes undeserving forgiveness. I think the antagonist failed at redeeming themselves, and the character development in general was spotty and highly selective. I do like the art though. I think the art is really clean and expressive, so there's that. I feel like this series wasn't long enough to appropriately explore its heavy themes and ends up communicating the weak message that no matter what, things will be okay again someday. Overall, I'm giving this series 2.5 stars, but before I wrap things up, I'm quickly going to talk about the one-shot story at the end of Volume 3, and I think it's called Love Letter. Trigger warning for child neglect and child death, so please skip ahead to my next review if those themes bother you. Now, I might get a little ranty here because the short story at the end of Volume 3 infuriates me. You've been warned. But yeah, the bonus story at the end of this book is disgusting and disturbing. It follows a person who kills their child via neglect, and the child's soul is determined to be reincarnated into different things because they still love this person and they want to be near them. What the f? This story reveals child neglect from the adult's perspective, and although it's undeniable that this adult's life was rough, the child's death was horrific and completely preventable. I sobbed for hours after reading this, and to have this child's soul, this little baby's soul, to have it keep revisiting this person because they love them so much, I'm not really liking the message conveyed here. It's so screwed up and it makes me very uncomfortable. Why is this story trying to make me sympathize with a child murderer? I've never given anything 0 stars, but that story is deserving of that rating. If you end up reading The Golden Sheep, just save yourself the heartbreak, skip over the bonus story. Just skip over it, pretend it doesn't exist. You'll thank me. I've taken a couple deep breaths. Let's move on. The next story I want to talk about is a happier one, and that's the one-shot story When Pink Rain Falls by Yoiyu. I think that's how you pronounce it. If not, I apologize. And this is one of the manga that Starfruit Books so kindly sent me. This cute little tale follows a young man named Hanano who, after his heart was broken, finds solace and purpose working in a flower shop. While working there, Hanano befriends the mysterious florist that hired him, and together they bond over their passion for flower arranging. I thought this was a very sweet story. It's only 38 pages long, but I thought everything wrapped up nicely by the end. I do wish it was longer. I found myself yearning for more material. I want to learn more about the characters, about flower arranging, and the hinted romance between Hanano and Tuma, I think is how you pronounce it. Yoiyu sensei mentions in their afterword that they would love to write more stories about these characters, and I'm all for it. I really like the character designs, especially Tuma. I'm very intrigued by his intuitiveness because his accuracy at guessing what people are thinking makes me think he can actually read minds. Also, I really liked his hairstyle. It reminds me of Android 17 from Dragon Ball Z. Hanano is a very cheerful and honest character. His actions were a bit immature in the beginning of the story, but working with Tuma helps him grow and he's able to redeem himself by the end of the volume. I do wish there were more illustrations of flowers and bouquets, but again, the manga is very short and every panel is precious. I really like Yoiyu sensei's art style. I think it's very pretty and soft. Also, I absolutely love the cover. It's so beautiful and I love the colors. I actually saw some footage from Starfruit Books' Facebook account of the paperback copies and they look stunning. I'm going to give this manga 3 stars, and I would love to see more from Yoiyu sensei in the future. The next couple volumes I want to talk about are volumes 1 and 2 of the Viz Media publication, Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead, story by Haro Aso and art by Kotaro Takata. In these volumes, Akira is desperate to check in on his parents in his hometown, and during this journey is able to scratch off items on his bucket list in wacky and ingenious ways. Overall, I enjoyed these volumes a lot, but I would say that both volumes had things about them that I didn't like. Volume 3 takes a darker turn, stepping away from the fun bucket list story to focus on Akira exorcising a demon of his past. Also, Shizuka, the risk analyst, decides to join Kensho and Akira on their road trip, and we get a glimpse of her backstory as a result. Her backstory is rather dark, and mentions implied animal abuse, just in case that's triggering for you. I don't think the manga works as well when it focuses solely on serious matters. It definitely shines more when it's goofy and silly. Volume 4 was better. We get to see the crew work through more of the list, completing more mundane tasks like visiting a hot spring and building a treehouse. I really like the creative and bizarre ways the characters end up achieving the goals on the bucket list. It's always a lot of fun and sometimes takes me by surprise. Also, I loved the addition of the foreigner Beatrix right here. She's a badass lady who's passionate about Japan and the culture. However, I wish she didn't have a German accent written into her dialogue. I found myself trying to decipher what she was saying, all while hearing Momiji's terribly dubbed German accent in my head, and I hated it. That's really my own personal opinion, since my problems with the accent half stem from my Momiji trauma.
Maybe I should come say hello. Oh, I wouldn't want to get in the way of any brotherly bondage time, though.
Kids, always watch your foreign TV subbed. I'm giving both volumes 4 stars. I didn't enjoy these volumes as much as the first two, but they still made me chuckle, and they were still fun to read. I can't wait to join Akira and the gang on more adventures, and I'm curious to see what they do next. This next volume is one that I'm not sure how to feel about, and that's volume 8 of the Kodansha publication, Perfect World by Aruga. Perfect World is a josei series that follows the relationship between a man bound to a wheelchair and an able-bodied woman. The series depicts the difficulties disabled people face with great delicacy and is careful not to romanticize disability. After reading this volume and organizing my thoughts, I've decided that I still like this series and I still want to continue with the story. I just wish it didn't progress so slowly. I understand that showing the growth of these characters is important, and I appreciate that everyone's story is handled with care, including the side characters. I just wanted more from this volume. The romance in the story has been scarce, and with how the last volume ended, I really thought we were going to get some big romantic developments, but we didn't. I shouldn't be surprised because the series as a whole has progressed pretty slowly, and the characters are always facing new obstacles in their relationship. Honestly, the series is a perfect example of why I like to binge read manga. Waiting for the next volume can get tiring, especially when the series is a slow burn. I'm giving this volume 4 stars. I'm excited that things are moving forward, even if it's at a gradual pace. I think I'm going to wait until I have both volumes 9 and 10 before continuing the series. One last note, this is actually my second copy of the book. I got a new copy of it from Indigo for free because the first copy they sent me was bent. If you'd be interested in receiving this copy from me and you live in either Canada or the United States, just let me know in the comment section below and I'll pick somebody at random. I don't really know what to do with this, and if there's somebody out there that would really benefit from having something like this for free, then I would like to give it to you. So yeah, just let me know. The next manga I want to talk about is Volume 4 of the Yuri series, How to Be Relationship by Tamifull. I'm really torn on how I feel about this installment. When I hauled this volume, I pointed out that I was worried about something bad happening, and not only were my fears realized, I really didn't like the turn of events. On the other hand, I respect that Tamifull sensei is going in this direction, because in the afterword they explain that they wanted to explore something different that doesn't happen very often in manga. But it's honestly a bummer, because I've really enjoyed the story up to this point. It's had its angsty moments, yes, but it was still entertaining and charming as a whole. I loved watching these women explore their relationship and overcome obstacles together. I thought it was really special, and now I'm not sure what's going to happen or where the series is really going. Another thing that upset me in this volume was how harsh Seiko acted. It was very frustrating because Seiko is my favorite character. I saw one person say in their review that Seiko sort of dropped her facade, and that makes sense to me, but there has to be a better way to communicate your feelings. And now that I've said that, maybe that's the point. I don't know. I think that these women have a lot of growing and developing to do, and even though I'm annoyed with what's happened, I'm still planning on continuing with this series. I'm giving this volume 4 stars. I'm committed to finding out if this couple gets a happy ending. The next manga I want to talk about today is one that surprised me, and that's volume 1 of the seinen series JK Haru is a sex worker in another world, by Hiratori and illustrated by Yamada. This manga was adapted from the popular light novel of the same name, and even though I found the synopsis intriguing, I wasn't expecting too much from this. But this manga ended up being so good. I liked it so much. Basically, the manga follows a high school girl named Haru, who ends up in a terrible vehicle accident thanks to the actions of her moronic classmate, Chiba. Instead of dying, the two become marooned in a fantasy world where only men are allowed to be adventurers. While Chiba goes off to slay monsters and earn a living as an adventurer, Haru has no other choice but to take a position at a brothel and sell her body to survive. This manga is way more thought-provoking and heartbreaking than I thought it would be. It draws a lot of parallels to our world and highlights how women and sex workers are treated in our society. Now, I would say that the sexism and misogyny is exaggerated compared to the culture that I'm familiar with, but this exaggeration allows you to see the problems more clearly. In this fantasy world, women have 3 options. You can be a slave, which is described as being sort of like a maid. You can marry and you can marry and bear children, or you become a prostitute. Women can also be priestesses who serve as healers in battle, but you have to be raised as one from a young age. Women are treated very poorly, they have very few rights, and are considered property or objects. It's even frowned upon for women to eat at restaurants by themselves or walk down the street without a male chaperone. Another thing I found interesting about this world is that it functions sort of like a video game. Everyone has skills and stats, and when Chiba and Haru were transported here, Chiba was bestowed with all these cheat-like abilities, and Haru received nothing. Nada. Zilch. Haru is a very interesting protagonist. She isn't necessarily likable. She's cynical, snarky, and has a dark sense of humor. Nonetheless, she's super interesting and is always calling out misogyny when she sees it. She's always trying to make the best of her situation, but sometimes the darkness seeps out and you see that she really misses her old life. We see her inner thoughts while she's pleasing her clients, and Hiratori sensei does not sugarcoat these interactions. Some of the customers are really nice to Haru, and her commentary around these clients is funny and entertaining, but sometimes her customers are sexually violent, and and treat her like dog shit, and it's really depressing. One of Haru's regular clients is actually Chiba, which is really gross and disgusting. I hate that he's taking advantage of her situation. Also, his non-stop bragging and continual attempts to hire Haru as a slave is just cringy. And now, it's obvious that this manga won't be for everyone. It's rated 18 plus and has its fair share of explicit scenes and crude language. However, I never felt like these scenes came across as gratuitous or just there for shock value. I felt like these scenes were necessary in order to properly communicate the struggles of living as a sex worker. I'm going to give this volume 4.5 stars. I believe there will be 3 or 4 manga in the whole series, and I cannot wait to find out how it ends, hopefully with Haru getting what she wants and what she deserves. Also, the art is gorgeous, and I don't think I mentioned that at all in the review. But yes, it's beautiful. I really loved it. Up next, I need to talk about a series I have yet to review on my channel, and that's the seinen comedy The Way of the Househusband by Kousuke Oono. I binged volumes 4 through 6 this month, and I'm really happy to report that all 3 volumes were hilarious, delightful, and an absolute joy to read. These episodic volumes follow Tatsu, a legendary Yakuza member with a badass reputation, earning him the nickname the Immortal Dragon. However, soon after marrying his wife, Tatsu decides to retire and abandons the life of crime for a new calling and passion in life. He becomes a house husband. The series chronicles Tatsu's bizarre adventures as he takes on the challenges of bargain shopping, cooking, cleaning, crafting, with the same seriousness and intensity as his former lifestyle. This series has never been disappointing, and I don't believe you can have a bad time reading this. It's just so silly and funny. I'm surprised that the long-running gag and goofy misunderstandings haven't gotten dull or played out, but I chalk that up to the diversity of the stories and the characters. I was happy to see that one of my favorite side characters makes a second appearance in the 5th volume, and that's Tatsu's father-in-law. I love him so much, and his interactions with Tatsu are just hilarious. My favorite volume of the bunch, though, was probably volume 6. I loved the chapter where Tatsu is trying to prove himself to the Dragons Association, which is a women's association. Yes. It's a women's association made up of veteran housewives, all with their own unique talents. I also enjoyed the dog sitting story and the team up with the otaku, and when Tatsu is trying to sleep and is counting Yakuza members. It's also the ultimate comfort read and a great pick-me-up in my opinion. You can pick it up at any time without worrying about having to remember important plot points or characters. The stories are lighthearted and funny, and they're a little dark, but not too dark. I do wish that we'd get more backstory with Tatsu and his wife. I'd love to see how Tatsu proposed, and I'd love to see their wedding day. We do get a glimpse of the two of them meeting, but I want more. This series is a 5-star read for me, and I look forward to reading the next installment in January. Just so long as it doesn't get pushed back, because I feel like I get an email from Indigo all the time telling me that there is a new release date for the manga that I've ordered, and it's usually like adding another month on to the previous release date, so we'll see. Okay, so this next manga is one that I can't wait to share my thoughts on, and that's Volume 6 of the shonen series Spy Family by Tatsuya Endo. I feel a little silly because I accidentally glanced at a poor review for this volume and was immediately worried. But this volume was anything but disappointing. It was hilarious. I loved this so much. In the first part of the manga, we get to learn more about Nightfall, which is this character here. We learn more about Nightfall while her and Twilight work a mission together. I thought I was going to hate her. Well, hate is a strong word. I thought I was going to dislike her, but she is so hilarious and very entertaining. I love how cold and unfazed she is on the outside, with her inner thoughts bursting at the seams with cute and adoring comments. Also, the confrontation between Yor and Nightfall at the end of one of the chapters was chef's kiss. I was laughing so hard. The second half of the book was really sweet and focused on the friendship between Anya and her best friend Becky. It was so wholesome. And watching Anya and Becky connect through their little fashion show was adorable. I want to dress my daughter in all of these outfits that Anya tried on. They were just so cute. The final chapter hinted that Twilight might finally be making some progress on his original mission, which is really exciting. You know what's not exciting though? Waiting until April for Volume 7. This series is still sitting at 5 stars for me. I really enjoyed the continuation of the story, the new characters, the cliffhanger. The only thing I wish there was more of is romance. But this series has never really been romantic, so I'm not sure if that's even in the cards. We'll just have to wait and see. The last manga I wanted to talk about today was another digital copy provided by Starfruit Books and is also one of my favorite things I read this month, and that's Toki by Tatsuya Ihara. When I read the synopsis for this manga, I instantly knew that I would love this because it revolves around a topic I'm very passionate about, and that's midwifery. Now, this manga is very short. It's only 53 pages long, but there is so much meaningful and emotional storytelling in those pages. The manga is set in the late 1950s in a small village in Japan. There we follow Toki, a midwife who's been providing childbirth assistance to this village for many years. However, after World War II, the GHQ, or General Headquarters in Japan, was reformed and started promoting American-style hospital births. With the medicalization of childbirth, freelance midwives are slowly disappearing, with their methods and techniques disappearing with them. Now, before I get into the review, I wanted to give a little insight as to why I connected to this manga on such a personal level and why this short story means so much to me. Being a midwife is one of my dream jobs. I find the occupation fascinating, and I've even looked into schooling for midwifery. I've advocated for midwifery services to be available to women in northern BC, and I'm a supporter of home births in general. When I was pregnant with my own littles, I thoroughly studied labor and childbirth. I watched home birth videos, I watched doula videos, I watched all the midwife TV shows I could get my hands on, like BBC's The Midwives and Call the Midwife. I watched friends and family actually give birth. So when I saw a manga about midwives and home births, I was so excited. It was like this manga was made for me. One thing I really enjoy when reading manga is when it teaches me something. and this manga does a great job of educating its audience about being a midwife in the late 50s. I loved that we get inside Toki's head as she's delivering babies, and we get to see her break down the procedures and techniques she's performing. I will add that this manga is in no way graphic. It doesn't show anything inappropriate. Not that childbirth is inappropriate, but you aren't going to get squeamish while reading this. I love that Ihara sensei uses diagrams to show readers what's happening, and I love the inclusion of outdated techniques that were performed in this time period but aren't performed anymore. It was interesting learning about America's influence on Japanese medicine post-war, and how the medicalization of childbirth sometimes robs women of this beautiful and life-changing experience. Honestly, Toki summarizes the issue of childbirth intervention perfectly in this quote. If the power of medicine is used in a purely rational way to treat childbirth as if it was an illness, it'll rob women of the joy of giving birth. This manga is just so beautiful and moving. I cried multiple times throughout the story, and I loved Toki's personal storyline that accompanies the midwife narrative. The art style reminds me of Studio Ghibli's, just in how the characters look, and I have to mention that the newborns are drawn really well. Sometimes drawn babies look weird. Their proportions are off, or they look too cute. Newborns are kind of ugly, but in a cute way. They're wrinkly and red and puffy, and I feel like Ihara sensei nailed it and drew the newborns really realistically. Overall, this manga is receiving 5 stars from me. I loved it so much, and if there were ever a sequel to this series, I would happily buy it. And with that, we have come to the end of my November manga wrap-up. I'd love to know what you guys have been reading lately, or perhaps you've read some of these manga. I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you're interested in watching more videos from me, you can check out my end card where I'll have links to my most recent videos. I hope you all have a manga-nificent day, and I'll see you in my next video.